Alright everybody, I'm Eric with Eric's Excursions, and today I'm at a location between the cities of Lakeland, Florida and Bartow. And just wanted to give you guys a little bit of history about this place. It's called Fort Fraser Trail, and almost 200 years ago, nearly 200 years ago, there was a fort that stood in this approximate location. Let me show you guys. So there is a new home development right over here. But apparently, when I was reading, some of the coordinates show that it was almost exactly, maybe a few hundred yards off, but almost exactly in this location. But I think it might be another 100 yards off this way. But I'll show you guys that in just a moment, okay? Little do these people know the history that their houses are built on. So I'm standing on what was once the actual trail, and it's yeah, probably about 200 years old, very, very old. So in November 1837, the U.S. Army built a frontier fort, which is right near here, as a part of a military path that went from Tampa to the Kissimmee River under the command of General Zachary Taylor. The fort itself was named after Captain Upton S. Fraser, who was killed by the Seminoles in the Dade Massacre of December 28, 1835. At some point I do plan to go over there to the Dade battlefield to show you guys that too. I think it's worth taking a trip, so sometime in the future, Lord willing, I'll get over that way and show you guys that battlefield where a pretty good sized battle took place. And so General Zachary Taylor, he served at Fort Fraser as commander of 2 companies in the 1st U.S. Infantry. Old Rough and Ready was the nickname of Zachary Taylor, who ended up becoming later on the 12th U.S. president. Born November 24th, 1874, and he died July 9th, 1850. He was of the Whig Party. Of course, we don't have that party anymore. His main focus was to preserve the Union. And now, when he became president, he only served for 16 months into his term. And sadly, he died of a stomach virus. So he lived only for 16 months after becoming elected. And he had one of the shortest terms as the U.S. president. I think there were 2 other presidents that also had a possibly shorter term than that, or roughly around that time. But he was also the 3rd president whose death had been traced to poor sanitation in Washington, D.C. So they had some sanitation issues in Washington, D.C. back in those days. So in his last words, I thought this was interesting. His last words were, "I regret nothing, but I'm sorry I'm about to leave my friends." And that was just prior to his death. And so about 5 days prior to dying, he had eaten cherries and iced milk. So it looks like that probably got food poisoning or something. So it wasn't the wars that killed him. It was complication of gastroenteritis, apparently, is what some say. So it's anyways, it's interesting to think that General Zachary Taylor, he spent some time in this location, in this area right here, and he saw active military service for decades. So he was a war hero, and he fought in Kentucky's War of 1812, as well as the Black Hawk War of 1832 and the Seminole War in 1837. He was said to be a practical and down-to-earth man who shared in the hardships of field duty that the men who served underneath him experienced. And it's worth noting that General Taylor was considered to be a war hero. And Fort Fraser was built to prepare for General Zachary Taylor's war against the Seminole Indians. In this immediate vicinity was the site of Fort Fraser, established by General Zachary Taylor November 1837 on his march against the Seminoles, culminating in the Battle of Okeechobee. Erected by the 4th Infantry and garrisoned by the 2nd Artillery and the 1st Infantry USA and Florida Volunteers. Alright, now I'm going to take you guys down a little bit further where I believe the actual fort may have been. At least that's what I was told by somebody, so there's no confirmation on this, but it's just speculation. There are some people that probably might know more detailed information. I know that somebody a few years ago, maybe about 10 years ago, wanted to do some archaeological digs here, but it wasn't allowed because this was private property. And it looks like it's been since sold to this developer. Sure is a nice day to come out here. So coming up on this field is, some believe that this is the actual field of where the fort stood. Now it does make sense because what I was reading online in one of the historical articles, historical magazine, Catfish Country, which is right over there, puts it just south of Catfish Country and near the marker. So it does make sense that this is most likely the location because it ran alongside, I believe, the railroad that used to be here. So there was a railroad at this time. I mean, back then, not now. It's been removed, but this field was most likely, believed by some, to be the actual location of where the fort stood. How amazing it would be to be able to get out there and do a dig and find some artifacts, and I'm sure it would be rich with all kind of different artifacts. I'm sure they would find different metal objects, maybe bottles, you know, broken pottery, that kind of thing. It would be so fascinating. I wish that could happen at some point. I would love to know exactly where it was at, but I believe it does fit the description because it Lake Hancock is over on this side. So if you look at a map, which I was looking at online of the old fort and the locations of where the fort stood, it makes sense because the lake is on the other side over here. This is most likely where the fort did stand. And I'm looking at Catfish Country, the restaurant over here. If you're familiar with it, it's in Lakeland. It's popular place people love to eat at. And so it puts us right about here. So anywhere in this area that I'm showing you guys was where the fort stood. Now, can you imagine almost 200 years ago, you know, being alive and seeing all this and seeing General Zachary Taylor at the time, he became president later, and the United States infantry and volunteers, of course, there were volunteers, and then all these wars that were going on in all these locations all throughout Florida. It's just amazing, fascinating, all the things that happened here way before I was ever born. So I like to think about stuff like that. It's really interesting. It's just fascinating when you think about all the people that have lived before you, all the things that happened, the wars, the drama, the conflicts, the good things, bad things. It's really something. Also, in Bartow, there is a grave site. I believe it's something oak. I looked it up and I forget the name, and I'll probably make a trip out there at some point, hopefully, to do a video on that, where soldiers from these wars, the Seminole Wars, are buried. So they're buried just a few miles away from here, some of the soldiers from those wars, and other wars as well too. But I thought that was pretty interesting. So yeah, I wanted to come out here and show you guys. This is most likely where the fort stood. Now I'm going to show you guys a couple more things before I end the video. I'm going to do one more ride by this piece of property where the fort was. Everyone's been having a good day. Another nice day to be outside. It's a little warm, but we're about to break into summer. With this construction going on here, I wonder if they've ever found anything. Most people don't even know where they're digging, all the history. They probably have dug up stuff and just didn't even know it. Here's something that looks like an abandoned property. Old shack. We're almost there. Hang with me. Enjoy the scenery. It's the first time I've ever ridden my bike on this trail. It's crazy when you think about what this trail was used for 200 years ago. I mean, I'm sure Zachary Taylor himself, President Zachary Taylor, the 12th president, was on this trail. He used this trail. It was a supply line, also used to transport troops to the next location to stage for the war. And I think that the Seminole Indian Wars lasted 3 years. 1855 to 1858. Okay. First Seminole War. In the 1800s, Many slaves from Georgia and Alabama fled to Florida to live among the Seminoles. These slaves had been trained in agriculture on plantations, and this knowledge helped the Seminole farmers thrive. The plantation owners wanted their runaway slaves in Florida to be returned. The Seminoles refused to give back these slaves, so the government of Georgia sent troops to hunt them down. Only a few were caught. The Seminole Indians had sided with England during the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812. The United States government sent General Andrew Jackson to Florida, where he raided Seminole villages to keep the Indians from fighting on the side of England. After the war, the white settlers claimed all of Florida. The Seminoles were furious and raided the settlers. This was called the First Seminole War. The war ended in 1819. Interesting. Found another sign. Fort Fraser. In 1836, Fort Fraser was built in this vicinity under the supervision of Zachary Taylor, an Army colonel and future president. The U.S. Army built bridges, roads, and many forts, including Fort Fraser, with the government's generous support. Fort Fraser was named after Upton S. Fraser, a captain in the 1st Artillery Company, who was killed in the battle at Wahoo Swamp. This fort was constructed to help defend a civilian settlement during the Seminole Wars. So we got slightly different facts. But fairly accurate. So yeah, Fort Fraser was abandoned by the U.S. Army in 1838, and however it was used as a shelter during the 3rd Seminole War and again in the Civil War. Some other interesting facts about Zachary Taylor are he had no prior political experience before becoming president, which was unusual in that time period. He also gained national fame as a general in the Mexican-American War, leading troops to victory in several battles. And Taylor was a career military officer, serving in the War of 1812, the Black Hawk War, and the 2nd Seminole War. His son, Richard Taylor, served as a general in the Confederate Army in the U.S. Civil War. Also, I found this interesting. Before, up to prior to Zachary Taylor becoming president, he never once voted in any presidential election. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Alright you guys, well that does it. That's the end of my video. Thanks for watching. Hope everyone has a great day.